Good morning. Welcome to the Meristem Minute. This morning, we have expert Dr. Alex Cochran to kick off our biocontrols series. He's going to help us understand what Prephyte means in terms of biocontrols and the influence it can have at the farm gate. So, Alex, tell us what Prephyte is.
Thank you, first of all, Melanie, for having me. Prephyte, as it says right in the title, is a broad spectrum seed applied fungicide. It is a living organism itself. It's a bacillus bacterium that behaves as a very broad spectrum fungicide, controlling many important seedling and soil-borne pests of crops for crops like corn, soybeans, and others. This is an EPA registered technology, so similar to the chemistries that we're all familiar with that are seed applied. Biologicals that are pesticidal also have to be registered through the EPA, and this is certainly one. And as I'll discuss here in a few moments, this technology is really useful for managing the pests that we think about when we're planting, especially well, really any time of the season, but as you think about early season and the risks for things like Pythium or Phytophthora, certainly Rhizoctonia and Fusarium that causes crown rot. These are all really important pests that it can impact stand. And, for any grower, stand is critical. You want to see strong, uniform early stands. That sets the table for the rest of the year and the yield that comes along with it. If you don't get stand right, obviously the rest of the year is a struggle.
So, Alex, you bring up, diseases, seedling diseases. But I've heard that Prephyte has an influence on nematodes as well. Help explain that.
Absolutely. So this is something that we learned fairly recently in our research with this technology. We of course developed it as a biofungicide, but sometimes you can see interesting things with technologies like this where they are useful against other pests. And in our case, in testing that was done over the course of the last 2 years, we've learned that it has very potent activity on lesion nematodes. The genus is specifically Pratylenchus. Lesion nematode is the most distributed nematode across the corn belt, impacting corn, soybeans, wheat, and many other crops. Its impact can be subtle, so it's a root nibbler, and it creates wounds in the roots that then open up spots for other diseases to jump in. So a lot of times it gets mistaken for other plant diseases when in fact the original cause of root loss was lesion nematode. But the point is we're seeing a benefit from Prephyte not only for the important plant diseases that I mentioned earlier, but also for the lesion nematode, which is a very, very critical pest that oftentimes kind of works in concert with those plant diseases.
So, in terms of Prephyte, you mentioned being EPA registered. I think that's really key in terms of biologicals. Share exactly what that means in
So
terms of being proven.
yeah, so the one of the things that when you take a technology to the EPA, you do have to, there's a lot of work that goes into that registration. The registration process is really not that different than registering a chemical. And, a part of that is you certainly have to validate that the technology is what you say it is. So you have to be able to support the claims that you're making for the pests that you're controlling, and have that data readily available to supply to the EPA. And as mentioned, we have a label that includes pests like Rhizoctonia and Fusarium and Pythium. Pythium in particular is one that I talk about a lot because our tool set is really limited for managing that pest. So we have a few fungicides that are currently registered for Pythium. The standard has been technologies like mefenoxam metalaxyl for the last over 50 years. But we also have documented resistance to those tools that occurs across the corn belt. So there was a study that was published in 2020 that did a survey of Pythium across the Midwest, and we identified that there are certain Pythium species that aren't controlled by the commonly used seed applied tools. And that it is not all that alarming because we've been using the same tools for many, many years. And we also have a lot of diversity in that particular organism. So there's a lot of species that can co-occur in a field. Some are sensitive and some are insensitive. The reason why I mention that is incorporating a tool like Prephyte is an additional support for controlling that very important disease where you do have limited options otherwise. The other thing that we've seen as a benefit with Prephyte is extended residual control beyond chemistry. So, one of the things, with many of the seed applied chemistries, their activity is limited within the first, 2, 3, 4 weeks of the plant's existence. Technologies like metalaxyl, mefenoxam, it's very systemic. It dilutes itself in the plant tissue. You can actually find it in the leaves very quickly after the plant begins to develop. So the point is you're losing activity over time. We expect those chemistries to degrade over time. The benefit of a biological fungicide like Prephyte is that it's colonizing the root zone and providing protection as the roots develop and growing away from the seed coat. So that's the other thing is some chemistries, and I have a lot of experience with one in particular, fludioxonil, which is a base chemistry used by Syngenta in all of their recipes. You would know it as Maxim in the brand name. That chemistry stays very close to the seed coat. It really doesn't move away with the developing roots. And of course, as a grower, you want to protect the plant as it grows. So having a biological that's growing with the roots and providing extended protection over time. And we've seen, in some cases, like in the case of nematodes, we've seen protection out past 60 days with this technology. So very long residual control throughout the season from just that initial seed treatment that was placed there. The other piece that I would mention is in addition to being EPA registered, this technology can also be used in organic crop production as well. So it is OMRI listed. So it gives those growers who, oftentimes the organic growers have very limited tools that they can use. This is certainly one. So that, whether you're organic or conventional, you can be very flexible. This technology is extremely compatible with everything else that it can be deployed with. So there are very few chemical technologies that can antagonize this, and vice versa. It works very nicely with the other seed applied tools that are being deployed. So the bottom line is it's very easy to use. The growers don't even have to think about it. It's there when they deploy it on the seed in the right rates and providing extended protection for several weeks after planting.
I love that you brought up another mode of action, especially in terms of soybeans. So, but when I think of pre-fight, I see the benefits on soybeans, but I'm super excited about the benefits on corn. And so
Absolutely.
you talked a bit about the stalk rots. So one thing that I would say that I would share my experience with stalk rots is when there are stalk rots, late season disease is greater. So by preventing stalk rots, we are also preventing the impact of tar spot. We're impacting, any kind of late season disease from the simple fact that we have a much healthier plant that can fight off those diseases. And so in terms of pre-fight, Alex, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't say that replaces your tassel fungicide, but it sets you up for a good, healthy plant that can handle disease a lot easier.
Absolutely, Melanie. So one of my very early mentors when I was training to be a plant pathologist, always would always emphasize, look, the best defense against plant disease is a healthy plant. So to your point, getting that plant off to a good start, a good strong root system, certainly suppressing disease early in the season can go a long way to helping that plant withstand those diseases that come in later. And one of the things, there are some diseases, crown rot's a good example that oftentimes growers are seeing that expressed late season, but the reality is that infection takes place quite early. The disease, which is a combination of different fusarium species and sometimes even organisms like Rhizoctonia can contribute to crown rot. But the point is that infection is establishing itself early in the plant, and then eventually moving into the upper portions of the plant and the stalk. So having a good, strong soil-borne disease control sets you up for the rest of the season in defending against some of those other pathogens. One of the things that I talk about a lot with this technology with growers is the multiple ways that it protects the plant. So, I mentioned, a few minutes ago that, one is just colonizing that root system. So this is very aggressive technology colonizing the root system. It forms what we call biofilms over the root. And in for those of you that can see it in the image in your upper left, you can see under a light microscope what that biofilm is. It's literally a physical barrier of the bacteria on the root surface that blocks plant pathogens. Another important mode of action is the stimulation of the plant's own defense response. We call that ISR. So this is an important mode of action because it's systemic throughout the plant. So protecting the roots, and you even get some shoot protection early in the season from the stimulation of ISR that can be really helpful at preventing diseases in both the root and shoot. But the one that I would really emphasize is, in my view, as being the most important mode of action is the fact that this bacteria, this particular strain, is very effective at producing metabolites at things that are fungicidal. So this bacteria just naturally, so there are many different strains of the same bacteria. Some are good at this and some aren't. This one in particular is a technology that we screen in a laboratory for its ability to produce these metabolites that behave just like modern fungicides and are as effective as modern fungicides against those important pests. Again, Rhizoctonia, Pythium, Fusarium, and others. And also helping with seed quality. So we've seen, for example, there's a lot for those of you that have seen it on seed, seed can also be coated with things like Phomopsis and Penicillium and Aspergillus. I call those junk fungi. And actually, that was the original reason seed treatments were first adopted, was to prevent junk fungi. We've seen Companion be highly effective on those junk fungi as well. So, the point is very broad spectrum, helping in a lot of different ways prevent some important pathogens that either degrade seed quality or certainly infect that seedling at very early stages that can impact plant stand and frankly, carry themselves throughout the season as antagonizing that crop for important diseases like crown rot.
So in Meristem's portfolio, Prephyte can be found in several soybean hopper throttle pails, as well as various corn pails. And so very easy distribution into the furrow right on that seed. But it is super exciting to be able to have new options with multiple modes of action. But like you said, ones that last much longer than your synthetic technologies that we're used to. So with
It,
that,
yep.
Alex,
Thank you.
thank you so much for your time. That is our Meristem Minute.